All right, welcome everyone. My name is Wendy Camisar, instructor and research specialist at the Howard County Library System Central Branch. Please be aware this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube page. We're so happy to have you with us today for Eating to Prevent Osteoporosis, presented by our partners at the Howard County Health Department and Giant Food. May is National Osteoporosis Awareness Month, so we thought this would be an ideal time to present this to the community. We are joined today by an incredible presenter, Melanie Burdick. Melanie is a registered dietitian, a licensed dietitian nutritionist, a certified diabetes care and education specialist, a certified specialist in obesity and weight management, and a certified personal trainer. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Dietetics from Eastern Michigan University and a Master of Science in Applied Nutrition from the University of New England. She believes in practical steps to improving health and wellness where no food is off limits. It's wonderful to have you with us again, Melanie. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope your day is going well. And tonight we're going to talk about ways that we can eat and live to prevent osteoporosis. All right. So our agenda, first, we're going to talk about bone health, what we can do, what foods we can put on our plate to promote bone health, and how we can easily incorporate some bone-worthy foods into our lifestyle. So I'll give you some tips for shopping, eating, and living today. All right. And truly, at any time, if you have a question during the presentation, feel free, you can throw it into the chat. I will keep an eye on the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along tonight. So really, when we think about our bones, they are just incredible when you think about it. They do so many things for our body. They give us support. They help with our muscle. They give us, they're a place for muscle attachment. They allow us to move around, and they protect our vital organs. And they are just amazing what they do for us. I know we may not always think about it, but they're really, really important for our bodies. Now, bones also provide a space for bone marrow, where all types of blood and bone cells are made as well. And so what's really fascinating is that bone cells respond pretty quickly to the environment. And so increased stress can strengthen the structure of our bones, and that can help them become more resistant to fracture. Because we know that with lack of stress, we can have our bones weaken pretty quickly. Now, what's really fascinating, when you think about bones, you think about the outside, and they look like a really hard rock, don't they? They look hard, but actually inside is sort of this lacy coral appearance. So it's not exactly solid, so to speak, and then it's are sealed in by a kind of a hard shell. And so what's really fascinating, and we don't always think about it, is that our bone is actually living tissue, and it's constantly changing. So it's not stagnant. And to keep our bones strong, your body actually breaks down bone and replaces it with new tissue. And when we hit the age of 30 or so, it pains me to say this, but our bone mass stops increasing. And so when we get to, in our 30s or late 20s, really what we want to think about is our optimal goal for health is to preserve that bone health, to keep as much of that bone density as possible. And so as we get better with age, I hate to say aging, as we get into our 40s and our 50s, more bone is broken down than is replaced. And so along with the aging process, we could have inactivity, maybe hospitalization, or maybe it's lack of nutrition. We can slowly start to see that bone mass continue to decrease. It's about 1% per year after the age of 40, but slowly and slowly, it's not as strong as it used to be. And so what can happen once our bones start to get a little bit weaker, we might have a diagnosis of osteopenia, which is basically the weakening of our bones. And we see it most commonly in women over the age of 50. Now, what's interesting is that there are really no signs or symptoms, but by having a DEXA scan, that can really see and measure our bone strength. And so what we can do if we have osteopenia, we can make certain lifestyle changes that can help maintain and preserve that muscle density and help prevent the progression of osteoporosis. Now, osteoporosis is when we get into that advanced stage where we've lost more of that bone density. And about 14 million Americans over the age of 50 have osteoporosis. And so what we can do, we can look at our lifestyle factors, activity, and maybe working with our doctors for medication management to help preserve and help maintain that bone mass as we get better with age. So that's what we're going to highlight today. All right. So tonight I have 7 tips that things of different types of foods and nutrients that we can add to our diet that really focus on our bones in particular. Now, I know all of us, we know that we should focus on nutrient dense foods. Absolutely. So a balanced diet is super essential when it comes to your overall health and your bone health. Now, we may not always think about our bones, but they need a variety of different nutrients. And so there are lots of nutrients for bone health. So calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. These are just some of the many nutrients that really help keep those bones in prime shape. Now, when we think about a balanced diet, if we're getting a variety of fruits and vegetables and legumes, beans, nuts and seeds, and lean proteins, we'll be getting a good amount of nutrients to help keep those bones healthy and functioning. But sometimes we may need to add in some additional nutrients as well throughout our diet. Sometimes if we get our labs drawn, maybe we might see that maybe we do need a little bit more calcium or we do need a little bit more vitamin A. And so sometimes we can modify our diet to increase some of those nutrients. But let's walk through on the next slide some of the nutrients that we need for our bones in particular. So, and here are some of the wonderful nutritionist picks, our healthy living picks, some foods that you can look for that are wonderful sources of all of these bone building nutrients. So one of the first nutrients that we need for our bones is phosphorus. And phosphorus actually works with calcium. It helps with bone growth and mineralization, so it really helps harden those bones. And you can find phosphorus in a lot of different dairy products in meat. You can also find it in shellfish, beans, sunflower seeds, lentils, and even sardines. So we definitely have a lot of different options available in our diet. Now, when we add in sources of vitamin D, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that can help increase our phosphorus absorption in the body. So one thing to think about. Now, I think it's always great when we hear about these different nutrients, we might be thinking, well, you know what? I actually love lentils. I love sunflower seeds and beans. And so we may be doing really well in our diet. We may have a diet that's filled with phosphorus. So hopefully after today, this will give you some ideas of, are there any nutrients that you need a little bit more of in your diet? Or you can say, hey, I'm doing really, really well. I'm getting a wide variety of foods for my body. Now, another nutrient that we need, magnesium. And so again, this helps with bone strength as well. And so this may be an area where older adults might be a little bit more deficient. And often if you take a calcium supplement, it may also contain magnesium as well. So where can we find magnesium in our diet? So lots of good things. Our morning breakfast banana, nuts and seeds, spinach, avocados, and chickpeas. So those are wonderful things. So if those are on your plate, you're getting a nice dose of magnesium. Now, what's also interesting, another nutrient that we need is vitamin K. Now, often we think about vitamin K for blood clotting, but it also can help with bone formation as well. So hopefully after today, you'll have a few aha moments about all the benefits that these different foods provide our body. And so when we think about vitamin K, that's green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, asparagus, and even pumpkin. And then also too, if we have any fruit fans out there, we also need a good amount of vitamin C in our diet. And actually, vitamin C helps with collagen synthesis, which helps maintain bone health as well. It's a primary protein in bone. So if you are getting a rainbow of fruits and vegetables in your diet, citrus fruits, tomatoes, peppers, broccoli. If you're getting a wide array of colors on your plate, you're more than likely getting your vitamin C. And then also one last nutrient that we might want to consider is vitamin A. And this actually helps with the growth and development of skeletal bone. And so we can find vitamin A in green leafy vegetables, eggs, butter, and even carrots as well too. So we often think about vitamin A for our eyes, but it's also important for our bones. And you can see here, these are just some of the wonderful nutritionist picks that are wonderful sources of that phosphorus, vitamin C, vitamin A, and magnesium. So whether you have a bag of lentils in your cart, some all brand cereal, some chia seeds, avocados, and even frozen spinach, there are great items that you can enjoy, but also better for your bones. Now, one program that we have at Giant that really can streamline the process when it comes to finding things that are a little bit more nutrient dense, it's our Guiding Stars program. So on the left-hand side here, we have Guiding Stars, which is a symbol of 1, 2, or 3 stars. The more stars a product receives, the more nutrient dense they are. So as you're navigating the aisles, if you're looking for nutrient dense foods, take a look and see if you can find those stars. You'll find them on the shelf tag right below the price on the shelf. So if you're picking up fruits and vegetables, all of those have 3 stars. So you know you're getting lots of nutrients. If you are in the cereal aisle and you happen to be looking at that all brand cereal versus maybe some sugar sweetened cereal, you're going to see more stars on that brand cereal as well. There's also a really helpful app. Guiding Stars has a free app you can download on at your app store on your phone. You can scan any food while you're shopping and learn about the star rating. Now, another program that we have at Giant is our impact ratings powered by our friends at How Good, which actually looks at the sustainability practices of companies. So it doesn't look at the nutrition per se, but it looks at the impact that those products have on the environment. So you'll see these icons as well as you navigate the aisles on those shelf tags, 1, 2, or 3 leaves. More leaves, the better it is for the planet. All right, so let's get on to tip number 2. And that's to focus on calcium-rich foods. So the majority of calcium in our body, about 99%, it's going to be stored in your bones and your teeth. And it really is what makes them hard and strong. And then the other 1 or 2% helps keep that body functioning at its prime. And actually, calcium can help you with your blood vessels contract. It also can help with muscle contraction and help with your central nervous system as well. So calcium is very, very important. Now, a question that we receive frequently, how much calcium do we need for our bones? So adults between the age of about 19 and 50 should aim for about 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. If you are over the age of 50, you may need more calcium. The recommendation is about 1,200 milligrams per day, but I always encourage individuals to talk with your doctor and see what is the right amount for you. Now, we have lots of wonderful calcium sources in our diet. So lots of different options as you're navigating the aisles. Of course, I think all of us are very familiar with dairy products. So milk, yogurt, and cheese, these are rich sources. And so even if you look here, 1 ounce of cheese provides about 150 milligrams of calcium. And there's also other items that are available. Now, here's a little interesting fact. Parmesan cheese is actually one of the highest cheese varieties with the most calcium. So there's also other products that we can look for as well that are plant-based. Tofu is often fortified with calcium, along with our different cereals. They may also have additional calcium as well. So you can't go wrong, whether you like to go plant or animal-based, there's wonderful sources available to you. And the wonderful thing now with the updated nutrition facts panel, as you're looking at different products, if you look at the bottom for those micronutrients, you're going to see calcium listed. It not only provides the daily value, but the number of milligrams in the product. So if you happen to pick up some Fairlife milk, you can flip the label over and say, okay, perfect. This is about 40% of my daily value, and it also gives me about 200 milligrams of calcium. So those labels are really helpful if you're trying to meet a daily goal. You can tally up all the foods that you've eaten, and that will tell you if you've reached your goal or not. So some wonderful things that you can look for. Other things, salmon as well, canned salmon with the bones, that will also give us a nice dose of calcium, but then also plant-based yogurts or those plant-based milk varieties as well. They're also fortified. All right. So another important area when it comes to bone health is vitamin D. And we hear a lot about this. Oftentimes, people may not be getting enough sunlight, or they may be lacking vitamin D in their diet, and often may have to take additional supplementation. So ideally, we want to try to get as much vitamin D in our diet as we can. But then if we need an additional supplement, it's always helpful to talk with your doctor on the amount that is needed for you. Now, why do we need vitamin D? Well, actually, vitamin D, when we take it with our calcium sources, it helps your body absorb that calcium, and it helps with that bone strength for your teeth and all of your skeletal bones. So it's very, very important. And so vitamin D, along with helping with that calcium absorption, can also help with your immune function. It also can help with your muscles and help with your nervous function as well, too. So if we don't get enough vitamin D, that actually can increase our risk for different fractures, osteoporosis, or even muscle weakening as well, too. So it's really important that we go and visit our doctor at least once a year for our general checkup, have those labs taken to make sure that we're getting everything that we need. And if we find that maybe we're lower in one nutrient, then we can make adjustments in our diet or add an additional supplementation as needed. Now, the sources of vitamin D in the diet are a little bit less than some of the other ones. So here are some of the highest sources of vitamin D in our diet. Now, we should aim for about 600 international units a day, or about 15 micrograms. And that's for adults ages 19 to 70. For individuals over the age of 70, the recommendation is at least 800 international units, or at least 20 micrograms. And the great thing, again, you can take a look at the labels and see how much is included in each product. So some of the higher sources of vitamin D in our diet, if we have any trout fans, rainbow trout will actually provide us with about 16 micrograms per serving. Other things, canned salmon, fortified plant-based products, and even fortified dairy products, like we have the A2 milk here. Now, we can also find things like fortified orange juice that has calcium and vitamin D added. And then other things, mushrooms that have been exposed to ultraviolet light are also a good source of vitamin D as well. Now, other things that you can look for, some yogurt varieties also have added vitamin D. So take a close look at those nutrition labels to see which ones have that if you're interested in finding a yogurt with a little bit extra dose of vitamin D. Now, one thing that many people often think about, they think about vitamin D and they think it's the sunshine vitamin. And so your body actually makes vitamin D when it's exposed to sunlight. And we always want to think about sun safety at the same time. So actually, the American Academy of Dermatology really encourages Americans to not rely so much on the sunlight per se, but try to get as much vitamin D as you can through your diet. And that's to help minimize your risk of sun exposure or the potential to have some sort of skin cancer. And if you are out in the sun, you definitely want to make sure that you're using some sort of skin protection, using your sunscreen to help prevent any burning as well. So try to rely as much as you can in your diet to meet your needs or through supplementation. All right, so let's go on to tip number 4, which I think this one might be interesting for some, but we want to focus on lean protein sources. Now, we don't always think about protein when it comes to our bones. We think more of it about our muscles, right? Protein helps with growth and repair and helps build those muscles. But in bone, protein actually makes up a significant part of its mass and volume, and it helps create sort of that meshwork of fibers that really help with that foundational growth. And it's important as when we're growing up, it's going to help us with that bone mass, but then it's also going to help us preserve bone and muscle mass as we age. So very much important. I know we always think about muscles, but it's good for your bones as well. And so it's important that we get plenty of lean proteins as we age. It's been found that individuals, senior citizens that have a lower protein intake are more vulnerable to having muscle weakness or actually becoming more frail, which can increase our risk of falling and having a fracture. So it's really important that we focus on lean options. Now, there's lots of wonderful lean sources in our diet. There are so many to choose from, again, plant and animal based. And so when we think about protein sources, we want to think one about the saturated fat, and especially a lot of our animal-based products. We want to think about that for heart health, but we also know that there are wonderful options available when you're shopping to meet all of your needs. So whether you like to do plant or animal, think about lean options, lowering that saturated fat. Oh, Rhonda, oh, perfect question. I was about to actually segue into that. How much protein should we be getting daily? It's a wonderful question. So the bare minimum, the recommended daily allowance for protein for women is at least 46 grams, and it's at least 56 for a man. Now, that's bare minimum. Depending on your activity level, your gender, your weight, your health concerns or conditions, our protein needs may increase. So that's the bare minimum. And definitely, if you have any questions about how much protein you should be having, you can always reach out to the Healthy Living team. I'll provide our information at the end, but we can help give you an idea of what you should aim for. But definitely, we want to strive for at least that 46 grams. Great question. So lots of lean options that are available. So lean chicken breasts, even cottage cheese, yogurt, tuna fish, we also have now plant-based tuna fish that's made from soy and pea protein that's also available. So there's something for everyone. But other things that supply a wonderful source of protein, edamame, beans, and even shrimp. So there's lots of wonderful sources that are available, but you can find what meets your needs. Okay, so as we move along to tip number 5, again, we think about sodium more for our heart frequently, our blood pressure, but also when we think about our bone health, we do want to consider how much sodium we're consuming. So sodium in excess actually can cause your body to lose calcium, and that can have changes or impact your bone health and promote bone loss. So it's actually been found in some research. There was a group of postmenopausal women that were on a high sodium diet. They actually lost more bone minerals compared to women of the same age that were following a lower sodium diet. So definitely about our blood pressure, our heart health, but also for our bones as well. Now, when we I see we have a question. Oh, so the question here, is there any problem taking a calcium vitamin D supplements for multiple years, or for, many years? I would say always run it past your doctor. If it's something that your doctor has suggested that you take, it should be just fine. That's a great question. Yeah. Always check in with your doctor about any vitamins, minerals, any additional supplements, and see if it's the right amount for you. Oftentimes, depending on your lab information, sometimes people can slowly decrease the dosage or wean off of it, but talk with your doctor and see what they recommend. It's always good to have a check-in. Now, when we think about sodium in our diet, the recommended amount is 2,400 milligrams or less per day. And when we look at the average sodium consumption in the United States, it's a little bit higher than that. It's about 3,400 milligrams. So we definitely want to think about how we can lower our sodium intake throughout the day. Now, when we're looking at a nutrition facts label, there are a couple of things that we can look for. On the far right-hand column here, we have the percentage of the daily value listed. And so this is a really helpful, it's a quick shopping tip when you're glancing at products to see if they're low in sodium or high in sodium. So two numbers that you can remember, we have the 5% and the 20% rule. 5% is low, 20% is considered high. So if you're taking a look at the label and you see that that daily value is over 20% or getting close to it, it might be ideal to maybe use a little bit less of that product or find something that's lower in sodium. So take a close look at those labels. Anything that's packaged food, lunch meats, soups, frozen items, they often can be higher in sodium than we realize. So take a close look at those nutrition labels. Now, often we might say, well, my food won't taste as good without that salt. Well, there's a lot of wonderful herbs and spice varieties available. And we have some here. We have McCormick. We're right down the road from McCormick here in Baltimore. So lots of wonderful choices using curry powder or even garden vegetables seasoning or pesto paste. There's lots of ways that we can add flavor and a kick without all that additional sodium. And we'll talk about some more on the next page. All right. So when we think about flavoring our foods, if we add spice, acid, and heat, these are great ways that we can enhance our flavoring without the sodium. So when we think about our spices, these have been used for centuries, and we've got that wonderful aroma, the flavor, and the color. You know curry when you see it by that bright yellow color. We also know that spices are wonderful sources of antioxidants, which if we add a little bit of cinnamon to our meal, that's an extra dose of those wonderful fighting powers or properties. So spices are a great way to get that extra dose in our diet. And so there's no wrong way to use your spices, things like clove or rosemary or turmeric, which is quite popular right now. These are all great additions to our meals and gives you that flavor without that sodium. Now, other things that we can do, we can add a little bit of acid. So this will actually bring out the flavors just as effectively as sodium. So using citrus juice or vinegar or red wine vinegar, these are great options to give a little bit of pizzazz to your dish. And then another way that we can add some flavor without all that sodium is heat. And so we can add in something like chili peppers or Tabasco sauce. This will give us that same sensation as that sodium and same flavor without all of that additional salt. So think about heat as intensifying and enhancing flavors. And if you're interested in more information on how to use spices, we have a wonderful podcast episode with the head chef at McCormick Spice. And I'll show you where to find that at the end of today's presentation. All right. So another consideration that we want to think about when it comes to bone health, we may not always think about this. We might think about alcohol for our liver health and overall health, but actually excessive alcohol intake can impact the balance of calcium in your bones. And so this may also impact your ability for your body to produce vitamin D as well. So we know that excessive alcohol intake, more than about 3 ounces a day, which would be about 2 to 3 alcoholic beverages, has been shown to increase bone loss. So we want to think about, what is our consumption? Can we ease it back a little bit? Now, the exact way that alcohol impacts bone health isn't quite understood at the current moment. But again, the researchers think that it has something to do with interfering with bone formation and really that lack of calcium and vitamin D. So we want to think about alcohol as well. So as you're going to different parties or get-togethers or events, think about minimizing your alcohol consumption. And this will also help with your triglyceride levels. This will also help with your glucose levels as well. and as an extra step for weight management. Often those alcoholic beverages can have a few extra calories that can add up pretty quickly. So think about your beverage intake and what are some other beverage options that you could use instead? Could it be a flavored water or an infused water? Could it be iced tea? Could it be a lower calorie lemonade? There's lots of options available that you can still have a great beverage, or maybe making a mocktail instead of an alcoholic beverage. There's lots of different ways to enjoy yourself this summer, but keep that alcohol intake to a minimum. All right. And as we finish up tonight, the last and a very important step is to stay active. Exercise is so important. Just like we think about strengthening our muscles, it helps our bones as well. And so the more stress those bones receive, the stronger they will be. So when we exercise regularly, it causes those bones to become much more dense. Now, there are lots of activities that we can do when it comes to being physically active. And regular exercise is going to help prevent or slow that muscle loss or that bone loss, and help maintain that muscle mass as well. As we age, we start to lose muscle mass as well, along with that bone mass. So exercise makes a big, big difference for our overall body. Now, there are lots of exercises that we can do to meet the goal of at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity a week. So if anybody would say, hey, you know what, I'm getting 150 minutes a week, and let me know in the chat. We know when we think about physical activity, oftentimes we think about it for calorie burn, but again, it's good for those muscles and those bones. So a couple of activities you can think about if you're trying to get to that 150 minutes a week. We want to think about weight-bearing exercise. These are any activities that you do on your feet that work your bones and your muscles and are working against gravity. So when we use our feet and our legs, that's going to put more stress on our bones and making those bones work harder and help maintain that mineral mass. So there's lots of weight-bearing exercises that we can do. Brisk walking or hiking, that's a great one. And I love walking because you can do it anywhere. And all you need is a pair of shoes. Other things, playing tennis or pickleball. I know that's quite popular around the Maryland area, or even climbing the stairs. These are all ways to strengthen those bones and those muscles. Now, other things that we want to think about too when it comes to physical activity, we want to think about strength training exercises or resistance training. And again, this is another way to put more resistance on our muscles, building that muscle mass, but also putting more stress on your bones and increasing that bone building capacity. Now, there are so many different types of resistance training exercises that you can do: weight machines, free weights, resistance bands, push-ups. You can do them on the floor or against a wall. These are great options. And we want to aim for at least 2 days of resistance exercises or more per week, working all areas of our body. Now, depending on our needs, maybe we've been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, it's always important to talk with your doctor about what exercises you should do and what the items you should avoid or maybe modify. That way you don't put any additional stress on your body. Some individuals will also work with a physical therapist or an exercise physiologist if they have any particular needs related to their medical needs. So definitely. Now, as we think about physical activity, a frequent question that I receive is, what do I do for weight maintenance? If I've lost weight, how do I keep it off? Well, of course, we want to think about our food intake, but if we want to maintain any weight loss, we have to think about increasing that physical activity. So if we want to maintain our current weight, we may need to be active for about 250 minutes up to over 400 minutes a week. So about an hour a day. So think about how active you are and maybe say, hey, how could I add in just a few more minutes a day to my daily routine? Now, another recommendation that's been changed more recently, last recommendation it was encouraged for 10 minutes of physical activity. They said 10 minutes is where you'll get benefits, but now actually any physical activity is going to be beneficial. So if you say, you know what, I'm starting out, maybe I'm recovering from an operation or an injury, I can only do a few minutes at a time. That's okay, because your body's still going to get benefits from that as well. All right, and so as we wrap up today, just to highlight 7 tips that we can do in our diet and lifestyle to help with our bone health and prevent osteoporosis. Think about those nutrient-dense foods. We think about them every day when it comes to our heart health, our blood pressure, our weight, and now we can think about adding in nutrient-dense foods for our bones as well. And of course, getting in those wonderful calcium-rich foods and our vitamin D sources, and then thinking about those lean proteins as well too. And then along with that, we want to think about those other strategies for heart health. So lowering our sodium is going to be good for our blood pressure and our bones. And then being mindful about your alcohol consumption and try to be as active as you can safely. These are all things that are going to help with that bone health, preserve, or help you build. And lastly, before we finish up, just a little bit more about the services that we have available at Giant. We have our healthy living team that provides a wide array of services. They're all free. We offer consultations. So if you say, you know what, maybe I need to focus a little bit more about the nutrients I'm getting in my diet, you can reach out to us. I'll put our email into the chat, healthyliving@giantfood.com. We would be more than happy to answer any questions for you or set up an individual consultation by phone or virtually. We also have our Healthy Living by Giant Facebook group, which is another wonderful resource of all things health and wellness. And then we have our Healthy Living by Giant podcast. And so you can take your cell phone, you can scan the QR code, and it'll actually take you right to our podcast page. And you can check out that wonderful podcast about adding more spices to your meals, along with over 100 episodes on all things from weight management to sustainability to mindfulness. So really something for everyone. Yes, actually. So a webinar on eating for diabetes, absolutely. We have available at giantfood.com/nutrition. I'll put this into the chat, or you can scan the QR codes. We have a variety of ongoing classes, all online, on eating for diabetes and prediabetes, eating for heart health and cholesterol, meal planning, you name it. Our featured class this month is building lettuce or better for you side. So changing up just your typical side salad to something fun and entertaining. So lots of things that are available right on our website. Great. Do we have any questions? Right. Perfect. Well, I appreciate everyone's time this evening on the start of the week. And if we don't have any other questions, Wendy, I will send it back to you. Oh, that's here. Awesome. Thank you, Rhonda.
Did we answer Kathy's question?
Did I miss one? Let's see here.
Is there any problem with taking calcium and vitamin D supplements for many years? Did we answer that?
Yeah. I would check with your doctor. Check at your lab check your lab trends and see if that's the same dosage that you need. It's always good to have that conversation anytime you see your doctor. Absolutely. Let's see here. Jeanette, water aerobics. So water aerobics is actually going to take a lot of that pressure off. So it's good for if you've had any knee or hip surgery. It's not weight bearing, so it won't really cause a significant change in your bone mass, but it's a great aerobic activity. So you can definitely enjoy your water aerobics, but it doesn't have that pounding of the pavement like walking or running does for your bones. But that's a really great question. I know it's very, very popular. Absolutely. Yeah, you can use the elliptical. Absolutely. Yeah, especially if you're using that resistance. Perfect. Yeah, cycling as well too. Cycling is going to be more of an aerobic exercise, but definitely anything to get your body moving is definitely going to help your overall health. But definitely thinking about anything where you have that additional pressure, any kind of jumping, running, walking, hiking, where you're hitting your pavement, that's going to help with that bone health.
I recently started wearing the like a resistance band. So for a long time I was using like ankle weights, but I think the band is making more of a difference. I don't know.
Yeah, the band, those rubber bands, they may not seem like a whole lot. They seem innocent.
They make a difference.
Are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of different exercises that can help you: muscle health, bone health, calorie burn, you name it. So just finding what you enjoy.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Great.
All right.
Oh, thank you, Francis.
Right. I was going to include just a brief survey. I'll put that in the chat. But yeah, thank you. This was fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Really great resources. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
You all have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.